Um,
40B, no?
yeah, 140b, Kuf Mem Amud Bet.
What daf is it really today? Okay.
Today's Kuf Mem Aleph, the next one.
Oh.
Okay, but Omer of Chizda. We are near the end of the middle of the page. In the middle of the page, near the end of the line. The last word on the line is bar. But Omer of Chizda bar beirav the lesme mishcha nimshi b'mayid chritzi. If a person doesn't have, a Talmid Chacham doesn't have any oil to smear his hands after he eats, in order to remove the sweaty hands, the dirty hands, which is what they used to do, as we learned in Brachot. Today we don't do it anymore. So what should he do? Nimshi b'mayid chritzi. He should wash his hands in water that he gets from cracks in the ground. Now, what's Maya de Charitzi exactly? Rashi says, "V'god aleim yirak rukis of v'nirkishem." There's some algae or fungus that grows on it, so they're like oily. It's like oily stuff. That's what he should do. Now, what's the teaching over here? What's he trying to say? The Maral says there's a deep teaching over here. That is an amazing thing here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who watches over his whole world, he takes care of aniyim too. An ani needs oil. That was the minig in those days. Everybody needed it to clean their hands, but he didn't have oil. So Hashem says you couldn't buy the good oil. There's always there in the natural world. I'm providing for even the aniyim. Anything that they really need is there. I'll tell you where it is. Says Rav Chizda, I'll tell you where it is. Go into the algae. Go like this. You'll see. It'll remove all that stuff. The aloe, right? So that's what the Maral says. V'omer Rav Chizda. Ba'abri Rav Dezovin Umtzu. Lisbon Unka. By the way, you know that the Alta from Kelm says, I'm sure you know this one. This is like right up Emunah. You're busy with Emunah. The Alta from Kelm says, anything that, let's say, there's not as many apples in the world, the pomegranates, as there's wheat. Not even close. Because wheat is the staple of the man's diet. That's what he needs. That's the main thing. So the most abundant food is wheat. That's why Hashem made the world. But you could go without eating bread, but you can't go without water. So therefore there's much more water in the world than there is wheat. Now, you could go without drinking for a day, but you can't go without breathing. So therefore there's air all over. Actually, whatever you need more, there's more of. It's just simple. The Emunah says the Alta from Kelm, just like in the physical world, whatever is needed more is more abundant. So too in the spiritual world, in the Ruchniut, whatever a person needs is more abundant. And he says, and what's needed most? Emunah. Because you need it every moment. Tzadik be'emunah tavich. So therefore, it's all over. And whatever you look at, you could find Emunah. Alta from Kelm. You never heard this? It's beautiful, no? So that's this, basically. That's similar to this. You need this, it's there for you. Okay. Right. A Talmid Chacham who buys raw meat, Lisbon Unka. You should buy the neck. Because it has three tastes. It has the taste of fatty meat, of lean meat, and it has the taste of the sinews, of the veins of the neck itself, which is also a different taste. And the Maral says the same thing here, that people want all sorts of different tastes in the meat. They don't just want a piece of meat. There's different meats. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides that for the poor man too. Because a lot of people would not buy the neck. The neck wasn't a... So the Rebbe said, that's for the ani. He should buy the cheap neck, and in the neck I'll give him all three things. I provide you with everything. Talmid Chacham who buys a shirt, like I think undershirt made out of flax, he should buy it from the city of Nahar Abba, because it has very good flax. The nechavra called tlosin yoimin, you wash it once every 30 days. Dimfatile tresa yachishata, so that it will last for 12 months. You won't have to buy a new one. Va'ano arva, and I guarantee this. If you don't wash it more often, it will last for a year. So Maral says the same thing, that Talmud Chacham has to always look presentable. So how is an Ani Talmud Chacham going to look presentable? So the Torah says HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of everyone. So he made a thing called flax. And if you buy the flax from that place, then and you wash it, it will last. Therefore, you could make it out with this also.
It's a great store coming from shirts from China. Once a month.
Once a month. My kitunita. Kita, no, you know.
The modern day.
Kita, a nice group. Kita Noah, a beautiful group. Meaning, the person that wears this deserves to be in a good group of people that are growing. You know, Rav Shach, when he was a bachi, he was so poor that they used to watch him learn Thursday night like this. The whole night he would stay up, Leil Shishi, because it's the night that people stay up to learn. And so they asked him, why is he like this? So he said, because he doesn't have a shirt tonight. Why doesn't he have a shirt? Because he only owns one shirt. So he washed it l'kavod Shabbat once a week. He went to the river, washed it, and it was drying. So Thursday night he had no shirt. So he learned every Thursday night like this.
Why didn't anybody want to just provide for him and give him some?
No one had any money. Everybody was, he was the poor of the poor, and they were the regular poor. No one had money. People didn't have, it was a whole thing to provide another person with food. It was a whole, I mean, sometimes it happened that people did. Sometimes, but people were also very humble then. It was like,
no, I don't want it.
If you weren't in the class, you wouldn't know kind of deal. No?
What?
If you weren't in the Bet Midrash, you didn't know. Like,
yeah, no one knew about these guys. They were the very minority in Lithuania. They were holding up the whole world, and they were the future of the world of Shach. No one heard of the guy. Saw him. Anybody met him? He was the guy, Laser Shach. Okay, he just learns the whole day. Very nice. No one knew what was really going on. No one saw the lights that you're talking about before. And the Shekhinah is resting on him. I just saw a story of the guy a few months ago. He said that he remembers Reb Aaron Leib Steinman when he was a young bacher in Switzerland. And he just remembers him. There was a man there, and he was just like staring at this guy, just watching him for like 3 hours himself, like the room, mama's like on fire, like learning. And he saw something very so he went over to the guy, started talking to him. He said, "What's your name?" He said, "Aaron Leib Steinman." He said, "What's your like goal in life? What do you?" They weren't used to this whole thing. He's like, "I would like to be a mekava for the Shekhinah. I want to be a place for the Shekhinah to rest on." So he said he remembers how he said it to him. Like that's what he's. Just tell this guy I'm going to share. So that's the Maisa. You hear? Okay, let's go weiter. So says the Gemara, we better move because I'm going too slow. Talmud Chacham shouldn't sit on a brand new mat that's made out of reeds, because the reeds are so fresh that they're going to ruin his clothing. Okay, he's telling you Talmud Chacham has to take care of his clothing because they are his honor. Talmud Chacham shouldn't send his shirt to his hostess that you should wash it. It's not derech. Maybe she'll see something that is not proper, like keri, and he will become disgusting in her eyes. Okay, so Talmud Chacham has to be careful that his Torah should not become shamed. Now, Rav Chizda tells his daughters how to act. Rav Chizda livnase. You should always be modest in front of your husbands. Don't eat bread in front of them. because maybe they will become repulsed. Don't eat vegetables at night because that causes bad breath. Don't eat dates at night. Don't drink beer at night because you get loose bowels and they bring to bad smells. And don't relieve yourself in the place where your husband does. Meaning, not in the open in front of them in the field, and even not in front of them in the place where they go, because the husband will be repulsed when he goes to the same place that he knows that his wife went to. If someone knocks on your door, don't say, Manu, who is it? Elamani. Which means, Mani was a lashon of nekeva. Like if you're saying it to a woman, you say, Mani. So therefore, they shouldn't think that you're used to talking to men. It should sound like, always, even if it's a man there, that you think it's a lady and that's why you're answering them. Understand? So the man doesn't think, the man thinks, oh, he thinks I'm a lady, that's why she's answering me. But if she would know I was a man, she wouldn't be so gracious and loud to me. That's a way to preserve your tznius. Okay, says the Gemara weiter. So he says like this, and during Tashmish, Nokat Maganisa b'chad yodei, they should hold the Maganisa, which is a kinoi for the dadim of an isha. It means a pearl. The kura b'chad yodei, and the other hand, b'kura b'oisem makim, Maganisa achvilu, the kura le'achvilu. The Maganisa you should show, the kura le'achvilu you should not show. So why? So that they should have more taiva and more chiba and more ava to them. Adem itztaron, until they're pained, behoda achvadu, and then you can show it, meaning not show, but it means that it should be uncovered. So that is the din. Maral says that way the husband will be mazriya more zera and it'll be royal lahoilit. Okay. Ain't sholin is akashin. So the Mishnah said, what did the Mishnah say over here? The Mishnah said, you're not allowed to pour a lot of water on the kashinim so that the stuff should float up to the top. Right? So now the Gemara says, but you could put them into a kvara or into a basket in order to protect, just to guard, to store them there. Even though sometimes the psayos will fall out through the holes, but that's not what you're doing. So the Gemara says, "Masisin loiki tana." The Mishnah is not like the following Tana. Which one? The Tanya Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov kol iker. You can't use this sifter at all, even for storing purposes. But the halacha follows the Tana of our Mishnah. Zok the heilige Mishnah. Goifin min lifnei hapton. You're allowed to rake out the earth on the bottom of the trough where they were trying to fatten an animal so they could shecht it and be nice and fat. And you're trying to put, all sorts of, hay and straw and all that stuff. So, now you don't want that there should be dirt in there, because if there is, the animal won't want to eat it. And therefore fine. You're also allowed to move. You're allowed to move the stud to the side, all the tevin. Okay. When there's a lot of tevin, so that the sherd doesn't step on it and relieve himself on it, and therefore ruin it. The Chacham say that's asr. So which halacha are the Chacham answering? The first one or the second one we'll see in the Gemara. Interesting halacha which needs explanation. The Gemara will explain. You're allowed to place barley and tevin in front of this animal, take it away from this animal, and give it to the other animal on Shabbos. And we don't say that that's like tircha for no reason. It's like just too much work on Shabbos for no reason. There's a reason, and we'll see what type of animals we're talking about, because the animal will eat food that was placed in front of another animal, and therefore it is fitting to give it to him. It's normal, and therefore it's not just a tircha for no reason. Now, what does that mean? We'll see in a second. Says the Gemara, Ibailhu, Rabbanan areisha pligi oya steifa pligi, oya tavaya pligi. Are the Rabbanan arguing on the first halacha that you're allowed to rake out the trough from from its earth, so the animal won't be disgusted? And the Chachamim are saying, no, you're not allowed to. Why? Because sometimes they would make a trough that just had a frame and didn't have a bottom. Okay? So when you're going to rake out the bottom, you'll be on the ground. What's going to happen is you're going to end up filling up the holes in the karka. And you'll be over on baina. So that's what they're arguing on. Oh yeah, steifa pligi. Or maybe they're only arguing on the din of removing the teven so that the shor doesn't step on it and make it dirty with the excrement of its feet. And the chachamim say, no, that's asur. Because guess what? For sure, this big pile of hay is already sullied. So therefore, you can't start getting involved in this big tircha of moving things to the side if it's already dirty. That's the fact. Or maybe both things that we just said, they argue on both. Toshma, let's bring a proof. The Tanya v'chachom imrim echod zeh ve'echod zeh lo yisal kenu lat stodin. You're allowed to do both. You're allowed to move the teven. Lo yisal kenu lat stodin. You're not allowed to move it to the side. So you see that you're not allowed to move the earth and you're not allowed to move the teven, both. So you see that he argues on both. Amar Rav Chizda machloikis be'evus shel karka, ava be'evus shel kli divrei hakol muter. It's only on the ground, and that's why the Chacham say it's a problem of being mashed with the guma is filling up the holes. Okay? What does Rav Daisa hold? We're not worried that he's going to be mechavin. Chacham are worried that he's going to have intention to do that too. And Rabbi Daisa is not worried about that. So even if it happens, it's going to be mutter because it's a davar she'ena mischav. Says the Gemara, but in a keli, there's absolutely no problem. What's the problem? Removing some dirt from a keli. The evish shakaka mi'ikil mad shari hakamash v'gumois. How could you say Rabbi Daisa allows it? He's being over on the East of the Torah. Ela iyit marhachi yitmar. Amar Rav Chizda machlokes be'evish shel kli. And the evish shel karka divrei hakol aser. Rav Chizda said no. If it's the karka, everyone holds it's aser. But there's machlokes. Rabbi Daisa says you're allowed to do it in a keli because there's no gmilah gumos. And the Chacham say it's aser. Why? Because if you do the one in the keli, you'll end up doing the one on the ground. And on the one on the ground, you might have kavana that you're also excited about being mashed with the gumos, and then it'll become aser. So therefore, it's like a gzeira, it's like a geder to make sure that doesn't happen. Says the Gemara.
What's an avus?
Avus is the trough.
What's a trough?
Trough is, trough is, I think in English, is what you put in the food of the animal. Like that, they come, they lean over, it's like a long thing.
Yes, okay.
That's what it is. So sometimes you wanted to put in the food, but there was dirt on the bottom. So and the animal will get repulsed, so you move it to the side. The question is, are you allowed to rake it out?
And the answer is?
The answer is it's a machloikis. And the way Rav Chizda says it is that everyone agrees that if the trough doesn't have a bottom, just like a frame that you put the stuff in, but the bottom is the ground, that's asur. Because you might come to also have intention to fill up the holes in the ground, and that's an isur of baina. But in a keli, if the trough has a real bottom, so really there shouldn't be any issue at all, getting out the dirt. But the Chacham said it's asur because you might come to do it when it doesn't have the bottom and have intention. you're allowed to take from one animal and put it in front of the other animal. You're allowed to take it from the animal that has a nice mouth, literally, and place it in front of the animal that has a bad mouth, literally. What does that mean? We'll see in a second. There's another brayso that argues and says, just opposite. You take it from an animal that has a bad mouth and place it in front of the animal that has a good mouth. What does this mean? Everybody holds, whether it's the first or second brayso, that you're allowed to take it from a donkey and place it, the food that was in front of the donkey may be placed in front of the ox. And everybody holds that you cannot take from a ox and place it in front of a donkey, because the donkey won't eat it. This that the first brayso said, that you're allowed to take it from a mouth that's nice. It's talking about a chamor, because a donkey doesn't have drool from his mouth. And it doesn't drool into it while he eats. That's why the mouth of the donkey is called the nice mouth. And that's why the cow, when he gets that food, he's very fine with it. It doesn't have anything on it. The noise of the behemoth, shapir rabbe para. And then the brayso says, you're allowed to put it in front of the mouth of the animal that has a bad mouth, which is the para. Why? The islariri. Because it has drool that gets all over it. So therefore, but the first brayso means only that way, but not the other way, because the other way, he won't eat it. Okay? So therefore, if you won't eat it, then what are you doing? So you're just exerting a lot of energy and effort. Tircha b'sham is asur. This tircha is asur. When it says you're allowed to take it from a animal that has a bad mouth, is bechamor de loidoik v'achil. We're talking about a donkey that, same thing, it's also talking about a donkey, but it's just calling a donkey pira because he eats anything. He eats thorns and all sorts of things. So therefore, that's why we call him pira. The cow is very picky. He only eats good stuff. So therefore, but they both are saying the exact same thing. And the halacha that they're saying is, from a cow to a donkey, you cannot take. From a donkey to a cow, you could take, because there's no drool, or whatever that's called. There's no, whatever they call it, rear. What do they call rear? Drool. Weiter. Sagt der Heilige Mishnah. Hakasha gabi amita. Lo yinanenu biyodeh. If you have straw on top of a bed, normally straw is muktzah, because normally it's for burning. Okay?
The beds used to be made out of straw. Is that why? Why do I have straw on my bed?
Oh, no. That's the next case in the Mishnah. This one just happened to have had some straw for the kira. Kira shehisika bekash or begevava. Right? That was for the stove, whatever. It just happened to, oops, I left that on my bed. What am I going to do? You know, sometimes you find muktzah in place. So what do I do now? So it says, don't move it with your hand, because it's muktzah. So what do you do? Move it with your shoulder. That's tiltul min atzad, from the side. That's not considered tiltul. So there's a major kasha over here. What's the kasha? The Rosh asks a good kasha. He says, when are you allowed to move things min atzad, tiltul min atzad? Only if you're doing it l'tzorech davar hamuter. But here, what are you doing? If you want to protect something, then you're trying to protect the kash itself. So it should be usher, even if you don't do it directly with your hand, because you're not allowed to move it indirectly unless it's for the benefit of something that's mutter, not for something that's usher. So the Rosh answers, that's when you go like this. you take it minat tzad. I mean, you use something to move something minat tzad. That has to be for the need of something that's mutter. But here that you're not even using your hand at all, you're using your leg or your shoulder, that is klach hayad. That's going to be mutter even if you're moving it for the purpose of the muktzah itself. Okay, and even Rashi could be, he calls it tiltul min hatzad. He just means klach hayad. Okay, fine. Now that's what you're allowed to move any muktzah with your foot or anything like that. Okay, fine. Let's go back. We're going to fly down. It's not hard stuff. You ready? If it was already designated as animal fodder, right? Animal food. So now it's not muktzah. Or you put a sheet or a pillow on top of it. So it was already being used as a bed to fluff up your bed, right? To lie down on it. So now it's not muktzah. So then you can move it with your hand. Machbesh shel balabatim matirin avoloi kavshin. Now, what this is a very interesting thing. It's like they used to have like this pressing thing. Now, the balabatim and the kavsin. Balabatim means regular people. Kavsin means the laundry guy, the professional guy. The regular people it was like a table, and they had this like wooden board, and they placed the cloth, the garment, in between. And then there was 4 poles that went into holes on the top one, that went into the bottom one. And the pole, like these doles, had holes inside of them that you put like a peg in. So it like tightened it. So it wasn't just sitting on top, but the tightening made the pressure strong. And that way it basically ironed out your clothing. It was the old iron. Okay, so the question is, matirin avoloi kavshin. You're allowed to take out your beged on Shabbos, but you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. Why can't you do it on Shabbos? Rashi says, because it's for the need, when you take it out, your shirt, you can release it, because you're doing it for Shabbos. But when you press your shirt, what are you pressing it for? Not for Shabbos, for tomorrow. So everybody asks on Rashi, that's the pshat in this Mishnah. Has Rashi, how do you know you're doing it for tomorrow? Maybe you're doing it for today. Do it on Friday night, so tomorrow morning you can use it. So there's a whole Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes says that really Rashi agreed that there's a problem of tikkun keli here. Of really, like a real problem. Like your mamish being misak in the keli because you're fixing the keli, the garment. But Rashi's talking about that you already were misak in the keli. So there's no more tikkun keli. And when you take out the thing, okay, so now why are you closing it back? The thing that you're closing it on already is mitukan, it's already nice. The answer is, but you want to put it back in it for tomorrow, so it should stay nice. So you're not really fixing anything, but you're maintaining it. But you're doing an act for tomorrow. It's awesome. Okay? But the real professional one, which is much stronger, lo yigaba, you're not allowed to touch it. Even to release it. Because Rashi learns that when you release it, it's like you're being soiser, you're like destroying something. Now, there's a good kasha in Rashi, because, there's a pshat also, but there's no stira and binyan in kelim. In vessels, there's no like building or repaskin, and there's no stira. Others learn, like the Rambam, that the problem here is a muktzah machzar and kist. It's muktzah because of loss of pocket. It's a strict muktzah because people are very particular about the kovish, and that's why it's awesome. Rabbi Yehuda has a middle sheet. He says, even the professional one, if you already took some of that cloth out Erev Shabbos, you can take out the rest. No, not if you took something out. Mutter means it was loose on Erev Shabbos, that peg. So then you could just release it entirely and take it out. Fine. But if it's tight, you can't. Omar Rav Nachman, Haipuglo, we had this before, a radish that you already detached from the ground. But the way that they would preserve the radish for a long time was to put it back into the ground. So the question is, let's say on Shabbos, you want to have it for the salad. So you let it go to the ground outside. It's not attached to the ground. It's just put inside, right? So you let it take it out. So the problem is you're doing muktzah. What's the muktzah? Because you're going to move around the earth. So it says, depends. Milmalo lamato shori, milmato lamalo osir. If the bulb part is outside, so when you pull it out, you're not really going to move any earth. But if the thin part is outside and the bulb is inside, then when you do it, it's going to be osir because the hole is very narrow on top. So in order for that big bulb of radish to come out, it's going to have to break through the earth and move the earth around. Okay, so now l'maisa, you're moving earth. It's muktzah. Now you can figure out what this has to do with our Mishnah. They said in the Beis Medrash of Rav, Tanina delik Rav Nachman. Our Mishnah, this Mishnah is not like Rav Nachman. Why? Because Akash al gabi amita liyan and beyodo ilman and begufoi. It says if you left it on your bed, then you move it with your shoulder, with your body. Aha. So you see here that tiltul min hatzad is not considered tiltul. Okay? So why is Rav Nachman having a problem? You're not moving the earth with your hand, you're moving it with something else. So the Gemara says, Shema Mina, you're right. There's a proof against Rav Nachman. Now, there's a big problem. Everything I explained to you before with the Rosh makes it problematic. I know I'm talking fast, but we said before that the Rosh said that this Mishnah really means, even though you're doing it for the sake of the cash, which is not the tzorech davar ha-mutter, it's the tzorech davar ha-osir, it's mutter because it's not like regular tiltum atzad. It's not even with your hand at all. It's not with your hand and something else. Yeah, but this case of Rav Nachman is. It's not such a great shinei by Rav Nachman. You're doing it with your hand, but just you're moving the earth al yidei, the bulb of the radish. So that one shouldn't be as mutter. So how could you ask a kasha from our Mishnah to Rav Nachman if it's two different topics according to the Rosh? So there's a Beis Yosef that talks about this. Weiter. If you want to cut peppers one at a time with the back of a knife, the handle, it's good. Tarti also, two of them together, problem. Okay? So if you do two shinuyim, like using the back of the knife, and you cut them one at a time, that's okay. Many Rishonim learn that this Gemara is talking about only on Yom Tov. But most learn that it's talking about on Shabbos. Okay, fine. If you do two shinuyim, it's okay. So the Gemara says, Rava Amar Kivin de Mishani Afilu Tuvanami. Once you're doing one, you're not using the what? You're not using a mill or a grinder. You're using the back of a knife. Afilu tuva nami. Then this is a total shino, even though normally a shino doesn't make things mutter. It's still awesome with the Rabbanan, but this is like a real big shino, and therefore it's going to be mutter even if you use a lot of them. Someone that washes his hands in a place that's not a Rishus HaYochid, like in a Carmelis, in an ocean or a Nor, and he wants to bring them out of the water, the Nagiv Nafshe B'Reish Avadu Listik. He's not only his hands, he's in the water, and he wants to come out. He should dry himself and then come out. Why? Because he may carry those drops 4 amas in the Carmelis. Okay? Fine. Because he has a lot of water on him, which is a real shear. Ihachi says the Gemara, if you're telling me that it's osir, ki kanochis nami, kodochi koiche arba amis v'osir. His body is pushing water 4 amis in the river, which is a Carmelis. So why isn't that a problem, to go into the water? So So the Gemara says, Koichoi, b'charmelis legazru. They didn't, because it's only your koyach, it's not your hands. He's not like pushing, right? You're carrying things just with your koyach. Since it's a derabanan, the whole thing is a derabanan in the first place. Therefore, it's mutter. Amar Abai v'iteimer Rav Yehuda. Titcha gabi ragli mekancha bekarka ve'emekancha b'koisel. Mud, or not, that's on your foot. You can wipe off on the ground and not on the wall. Amar Rav my time b'koisel. Why not on the wall? Mishum de mechzi kiboyne. Habin chaklahu. Because it looks like you're what? You are now building. Because you're putting like mortar on the wall. And you are like strengthening the wall and adding to the wall. Okay? It's a derabanan. Because you're just trying to clean off your foot. You're not trying to make a bigger binyan, but still it looks like a binyan, so it's a binyan. So he says if that's the problem, binyan chaklahu. So this binyan is a chaklo. Chaklo means of a stud. Not in a home. Because a home wall, you don't smear with mortar. You actually take plaster, which is mixed with sand. So therefore, in a house, even if you try mamish to build, all it's going to be is a Issa D'Rabbanan. And when you're not mechaven, like over here, that you're just trying to wipe off your foot, it shouldn't be a problem at all. So therefore, Rav still doesn't understand why you're not allowed to wipe off your foot on the wall of a home. He says the opposite. You could do it on a wall because there's no problem. But you can't do it on the ground, because maybe you'll fill in some gumes. One says he takes both problems of building Rabbanon and of being Mashu Gumes. He doesn't have any problem. Because he says even if you fill up the gumais, first of all, it's not a problem on the wall, because it's the wall of the home, so it's no binyan. And the problem on the ground is not an issue because he holds you're not being mechaven for that. We hold like Reb Shimon, the dov she'enim mechaven mutter. So the Mar Berei Ravina b'Maikim mekanchilei, according to Mar, the son of Avinu, that said that you're not allowed to use of ground or the wall. So what do you wipe your foot on if it has mud? Mekanchilei b'koiro, on a wooden beam that's sitting on the ground. Because then it doesn't look like you're building up the beam, and it also doesn't look like you're not being mashva gumas. A person shouldn't sit next to the edge of the lechi, which is placed by the mavui, and if he has something in his hands, maybe what he's holding in his hands will roll into Rishus Hashanah, and he'll carry it back in, because he won't be able to tell exactly where the border is, and he won't chap that he's going to Rishus Hashanah. A person is not allowed to straighten out a barrel that's sitting on a clump of earth. So sometimes you like move it around to get to like a place that it'll be flat and even. So you shouldn't do that because maybe you come to be mashve gumos. Now, and we're worried, even though we paskin, like Reb Shimon, that we're worried that you might come to do it with kavanah also. A person is not allowed to tighten soft cottons that are wet in the mouth of a jug, because maybe he'll come to schita. It'll squeeze it out. If you have mud on your beged, you're allowed to rub it off your beged from the inside and not from the outside. It means you hold onto the beged from the inside and you put your hands inside over here. You have some mud over here, and you go like this. That you can do from the inside. But you cannot do that from over here like this, from the outside. What's the difference? So, in fact, the Gemara, first the Kasha, the Gemara asks, Because if you do it from the outside, it looks like you're trying to whiten the shirt. It's part of the cleaning process was to rub. Now, even though you're not using water, so it's not really an Issa D'Oraita, but it looks like you're in the middle of that process. If you do it from the inside, it's not, you can't tell. Made for effect the Gemara, Titchal Gabi Minola Bigori Bigav Stakin, Veshal Big the Migori Bitzipirin. If you have mud on your shoe, you scrape it off with the back of a knife. If it's on your beged, you scrape it off with your fingernail. Uvilvachalo Yisach case. Yichas case. I said Mesachsachai before. It's Mechaskasai. Meaning, don't rub your beged. So the Gemara says, "My love shaloi kaskes klal." Sounds like you shouldn't rub it even if you put your hand inside. Loi shaloi kaskes mibachutz el mibiftim. Only rub it on the outside, not on the inside. Amar Rabbi Vo, Amar Rabbi Loza, Amar Rabbi Yanai. Garin minu chadosh avalo yoshan. You're allowed to scrape off the mud from a new shoe, but not an old one, because when you do that to a new one, to an old one, you're also peeling off the bad leather that's old already, and you're smoothing out, which is the Isser of Machek, to smooth out leather by scraping it down. Right? You're sanding it down. So that's the problem. So the Gemara says, "B'memegores, if you have an old shoe and it gets full of mud, how do I scrape it off?" Amar Bavo, begav stakin, with the back of a knife which is not sharp, and then it won't smooth out the. All it will do is remove the mud, and it won't smooth out the leather. There was a zokin that told. We know a lot of times when it says Ahusabo, Eliyahu Navi, according to many Mefarshim, Mamish, we're meeting Eliyahu Navi on the night of Eliyahu Navi of Motzei Shabbos. By the way, just as a quick thing, remember the psukim I was telling you that we lane these V'asir kol b'diloich? It's not these weeks. This week we had it in Shabbat. This week's Haftarah. Today's Haftarah. I was learning the whole thing. I was like, this is Tzion b'mishpat t'pada b'shaveh b'tztaka v'asir kol b'diloich v'shiv shiv ta'ich v'rishoyne v'yatzach v'atchila kiryan emana. Unbelievable. This week, the Gemara is busy with this week's Haftarah. Omeleu Saba, Eliyahu Hanavi told Rabbi Avohu, Samedi doch mikameho, the Tony Rabchiya. Oisa Hamedi doch. Remove your ruling for this ruling. The Tony Rabchiya, Emigari Leminul Chodesh Leminul Yoshon. You're not allowed to scrape even with the back of a knife. Even in a brand new shoe, you're not allowed to anoint your foot with oil, v'hu, and that is when your foot's going into a shoe or a sandal. Because by force, what's going to happen is your oily foot is going to smear the shoe. And the oil is very beneficial for the leather, and that's an isur of me'abed. It's an av melacha of salting. It's part of the processing the hide, and this makes the leather stronger and better. Fine, you soften it actually, but it makes it better. But you could do it if you first put it, meaning you can't do it on your foot if it's inside. But if you have it outside, then you could do it, and then put it inside. Because, you'll see in a minute why. Because it's not touching the sandal directly. It's just going from your foot and then into the shoe. So what? We'll see in a second. And you're allowed to anoint your whole body with oil and then roll around on a leather like cloth that you use for a tablecloth. And you don't have to worry about any Isser Shabbos. When you're trying to shine up the shoe by putting oil on your foot when your foot is inside the shoe, that's a problem. Aval la'abdoi, but when you're trying to do ibud, that's not a problem. Okay? If you do it on your foot and then you place the foot inside the shoe, that's not an issue. Why not, Rabbatai? Right? And even though you want to shine, even if you want to shine up the shoe, but that's not an issue to shine, to give it a bright shine, that's not a problem. But if you want to be ma'abed, it's going to be asr. So the Gemara says, la'abdoi pshita, of course it's asr. V'stu l'tzachchem me'ikum adashari, and to shine it is mutter. Which means you shouldn't be able to do it midrabanan, because if you're allowed to put oil on a shoe, which is mamish the isra of ibud, but as long as you're doing it for a different reason, you might come to do it for the reason of ibud. So if anything was said in the name of Rav Chizda, this is what he said. This heter that you let it anoint your foot even right before it goes into the shoe is elashir l'tzachtzachai. When you put the amount, that's only the amount that you need to shine. So then it's clear that that's not its kavono. Aval shir la'avdei aser, and it's aser. Okay. So now like this. If you're trying to shine it, then you can't even do a little bit that's a share of shining, because midrabanan it's aser, because you might come to lavdei. If you don't want to do that at all, then it's only mutter if it's the shir of tzichtzuk and not the shir of ibud. Shir of ibud is going to be isra midrabanan. A child's not allowed to use a large shoe because it might fall off his foot. He's allowed to use a large cloak because it won't fall off. And we're not worried that he's going to take it off, because then he will be unclothed in Rosh Hashanah. A lady can't go out with a ripped shoe on top, because it's a disgrace and people will laugh at her. So therefore she'll carry it. And she can't do chalitza, the mitzvah of chalitza, removing the shoe, right? She did chalitza with it, chalitza kshera, it is going to be kosher, because it is a shoe. Because it covers most of the foot. And you're not allowed to go out with a brand new shoe. Why? Because if it's brand new, she didn't really try it on yet. She's like, got it. So she puts it on. Now in the middle of walking, she'll be like, this is like not exactly my size. So she'll take it off. But a man is not so makpid if it fits him so perfectly or not. Therefore, he's allowed to wear a brand new shoe even if it won't fit him. That's only if she never wore it, but once she wore it once, she already knows that it fits her, so she could wear it. You have a shoe that is on top of the, what do they call it? The shoe forming thing that forms the shoe. I don't know what it's called. Is a word there? Imus?
Form.
What?
They call it a shoe form.
Oh, a shoe form. And one says you're not allowed to take off the shoe. Now, what's the issue here? Muktzah. So why yes, why not? So the Gloy Kash, it's not a stira. It's not a problem. The two brises are not arguing. They are arguing, but one is Rabbi Eliezer, Harabonim. The Tanan, Minul Shel Gabi Imas, Rabbi Eliezer, Mitarvachom Mitam. Rabbi Eliezer says that that shoe is Royal the Kabal Tumah. Is not Royal the Kabal Tumah. The Chacham say it is. Why? Because the question is like this: is it considered a shoe before it comes off the shoe form or not? So Rabbi Eliezer says it's not. The Chacham say it is, because it's the Chacham say it's considered like it's already a complete thing. It's Gnar Melacha. So therefore, the two brises that said that you're allowed to move it on Shabbos or not is like this: the brise that said you're allowed to slip off the shoe holds like the Chacham that it's a keli. Therefore, since it's a keli, the shoe is already a keli, so it's not muktzah. It's done. But Rabbi Eliezer says it's not done because it's still on the shoe form. So just like it's not makabel tumah because it's not a finished keli, so therefore if it's not a keli, it's muktzah. Because everything, if it's not a keli, it's muktzah. So the Gemara says, "Ha nichal the Rav da Omer Dover shemalachta le'isa bein litzerach guf bein litzerach mekoymoi mutter shapir." Remember we had a machlokes and we passed from like Rava that if you have a keli shemalachta le'isa, okay, you let him move it. Let's say gufa. Let's say mekoymoi. Okay, so now this imus, forget about the keli, forget about the shoe. But the imus itself is a davar that's muktzah. Because it's keli, shemelachtoi li'isur. What do you do with it? You build shoes. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbat. So therefore, how you let him move? How you let him move this around when you're taking off the shoe? So the answer is, according to Rav, it's gevaldik. No problem. Why? Because why, Rabbatai? Because you're moving it l'tzorech mikoymai. No, you're in my way. Why in my way? Because you're stuck in my shoe. And I need that area. I need my shoe to put it on my foot. So therefore I'm allowed to move it. But according to Abaye that holds that you're only allowed to move it for itself, but for its area, its space that it's taking up, you can't. So now you're not moving this shoe form for itself. You're moving it to get out of the way of the shoe. So it should be aser, according to Abaye. The answer is it's very loosely placed on the shoe form. So when you slip it off, you're not going to be moving the shoe form at all. That's the answer according to Abaye. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, because we even know that is the case, because Rabbi Yehuda Atana said, if it was loose, it's mutter. Ooh, the problem is like this. If Rabbi Yehuda is saying it's only mutter because it's weak, because it's loose, you're not going to end up moving it. That's mashman like Abaye. Now it's a kasha on Rava. Says the Gemara, Taima de Rafui. It's only mutter, Rabbi Yehuda says, because it's loose. But if it was tight, you wouldn't. Why? Because you're going to end up inevitably moving the actual shoe form. That only makes it according to Abaye that has an issue of moving it, because it's l'tzarech davar ha'asur, l'tzarech davar, l'tzarech mekoymai, sorry. It's asur, so that's why you're not allowed to move it. And that's why the only heter Rabbi Yehuda says if it's rough, you're not going to end up moving it. Even if it's tight, you should be able to move it because it's tzarech mekoymai. So the Gemara says, Hahi, that differentiation that Rabbi Yehuda said that it needs to be loose is the Rabbi Yehuda Mishum the Rabbi Eliezer. Because Rabbi Eliezer holds, that's only according to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer holds that it's not a keli at all. So it's not Gemar Melacha because it hasn't been finished. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda adds in his name, that's only if it's tight. But if it's weak, then it's considered like it's done. Why is it not considered it's done? Because it's one of the processes of making the shoe is like to get it off that thing. But if it's loose, then it is done. Then Rabbi Eliezer will hold that the shoe is mekabel tumah because it's a keli. If it's a keli, it's mutter to move on Shabbos. Okay, and that's why you let him move the shoe. But it's not talking about the shoe form. If you're just saying if it's loose, you're not going to end up moving the shoe form. That's how Rava will explain. Okay, if it's loose, then you won't have an issue because of the shoe. The shoe form I never had an issue with because you're moving it l'tzarech mekoymai. And a kli shulach says, but the problem is the shoe itself is not a keli according to Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Yehuda says that according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's also fine if it's already loose because that means it's basically off. So it's already a finished product and it's mekabel tumah and it's a keli and therefore it's not a problem with muktzah. The Tanya as we learned in the Braita, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Eliezer im hoyer rafui. He said it in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. If it's rafui mutter, then it's mutter because of the keli itself, because of the shoe itself. Hadron Allah Toilin. Eliyahu, I know.